Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden. Let's swap hands for this one. The soul or the astral body, through subtler vibrations of the elements, through the electric and the magnetic fluid of their polarity, the man proper, the soul, has proceeded from the Akasha principle or the finer etheric vibrations. In the same way as the elements are functioning in the material body, the soul or the so-called astral body will behave. The four-pole magnet, with its specific qualities, connects or amalgamates the soul with the body. This amalgamation takes place with analogy to the body by the electromagnetic influence of the elements. We, the adepts, call astral matrix or life this active behaviour of the elements, or the so-called electromagnetic fluid of the soul. This astral matrix, or the electric magnetic fluid of the soul, is not identical with the occultist's aura I shall speak of later. The astral matrix, or the electromagnetic fluid, is the connecting link between body and soul. The fiery principle causes in the soul what is constructive. The principle of water causes the animating. The principle of air is balancing, and the earthy principle causes what is thriving, compound and preserving in the soul. The astral body is performing exactly the same functions as the material body. Man has been fitted out with 5 senses corresponding to the 5 elements, of which the astral body or the soul, with the help of the bodily senses, makes use to receive perceptions of the physical world. This receiving and operating of the 5 senses through the astral and the material body is realized by our immortal spirit. Why this spirit is immortal, this will be explained in a later chapter. Without any activity of the spirit in the soul, the astral body would be without life and dissolve itself into its components. As the spirit would not be able to operate without the intervention of the soul, the astral body is the seat of all the qualities the immortal spirit has. According to its development and maturity, spirit has a different electric or magnetic fluid vibration, which becomes patent in soul in the 4 temperaments outwardly. In accordance to the predominant elements, we distinguish the choleric, the sanguine, the melancholic, and the phlegmatic temper. The choleric temper comes from the fiery element, the sanguine temper is due to the element of air, the melancholic temper is born from the watery element, and the phlegmatic one is ascribed to the earthy element. To the strength and vibration of the respective element correspond in the various properties the strength, vigour, and expansion of the respective fluid vibrations. Each of these 4 elements, which determine man's temper in the active form, owns the good or good properties, and in its passive form, the contrary or the bad qualities. It would be too prolix to inform here about the effects of the elements, and it is better for the incipient adept to find out himself further effects by his own meditation. This manner also has a very special reason on the path to initiation. Here I shall cite a few examples only. The choleric temper, in its active polarity, has the following good qualities: activity, enthusiasm, eagerness, resolution, courage, productivity, etc. In the negative form, these qualities are gluttony, jealousy, passion, irritability, intemperance, bent to destruction, etc. The sanguine temper in its active form shows capacity of penetrating, diligence, joy, adroitness, kindness, clearness, lack of grief, cheerfulness, optimism, eagerness, independence, familiarity, etc. In the negative form, continual feeling of being affronted, contempt, propensity to gossiping, lack of endurance, slyness, garrulosity, dishonesty, fickleness, etc. The melancholic temper, in its active form, respectability, modesty, compassion, devotion, seriousness, docility, fervour, cordiality, comprehension, meditation, calmness, quick to give one's confidence, forgiveness, tenderness, and so on. In the negative form, indifference, depression, apathy, shyness, laziness, etc. The phlegmatic temper in its active form, respectability, reputation, endurance, consideration, resolution, firmness, seriousness, scrupulousness, thoroughness, concentration, sobriety, punctuality, reservedness, objectivity, infallibility, responsibility, reliability, circumspection, resistance, self-assurance, and so on. In the negative form, insipidity, unscrupulousness, misanthropy, dullness, tardiness, laziness, unreliability, laconism, and so on. The qualities of the temperaments, according to the preponderant quality, form the basis of the human character. The intensity of these qualities shown outwardly depends on the polarity, the electric or the magnetic fluid. The total influence of the effects of the temperaments results in an emanation professionally called aura. Therefore, this kind of aura is not to be compared with the astral matrix, because between these two conceptions there is a thumping difference. The astral matrix is the connecting substance between body and soul, whilst the aura is the emanation of the action of the elements in the various qualities, having its origin either in the active or in the passive form. This emanation in the whole soul produces a certain vibration corresponding to a certain colour. On the grounds of this colour, the adept can exactly recognise his own aura, or that of another being with the astral eyes. Backed by this aura, the seer can establish not only a man's basic character, but he also can perceive the action or the polarity of the man's vibration and influence it eventually. I shall speak of these problems in a more detailed way in a separate chapter relating to introspection. Hence, a man's temperament influences his character, and both together, in their effect as total result, are creating the emanation of the soul or the aura. This is also the reason for high adepts or saints always being represented in the images with a halo identical to the aura we have described. Besides character, the temperament and the activity of the electromagnetic fluid, the astral body still has two centres in the brain, the cerebrum being the seat of normal consciousness, whilst in the cerebellum there is the opposite to the normal consciousness, the subconsciousness. As to their functions, see chapter concerning the spirit. As it has been said before, according to the elements, the soul is divided in exactly the same way as the body. The psychic functions, powers, and properties also have their seat respectively, in the soul, and certain centers analogous to all the elements which the Indian, turning the page, which the Indian philosophy designates as lotuses. Don't expect too much professionalism here. The awakening of these lotuses is named Kundalini Yoga in the Indian doctrine. I desist, however, from a comment on these lotuses or centers because the student interested in this problem will find all the necessary enlightenment in the respective literature. Only slightly I will touch it and say that the lowest center is the so-called Muladhara or earthy center, having its seat in the lowest part of the soul. The next center is that of the water, with its seat in the region of the sexual organs, and designated in the Indian terminology as Swadhisthana, the center of the fire. As center of the soul is in the umbilical region and is named Manipura. That was the end of the sentence. The center of the fire, as center of the soul, is in the umbilical region and is named Manipura. The center of the air, as compensatory element, is in the region of the heart and is termed Anadhata. The center of the ether, or principle of Akasha, is found in the region of the neck and is named Visuddha. Another center, that of volition and intellect, is between the eyebrows and is called Ajna. As the supreme and most divine center is regarded the thousand-leaved lotus named Sarasrara, from which derive and are influenced all the other powers of the centers. Beginning at the top from the supreme center along the back down to the lowest earthy center, like a channel runs the so-called Susumna, or the Akasha principle already known to us, liable for the connection and control of the entire centers. Later on, I shall come back to the problem of the evocation of the snake power in the single centers. In describing the soul, the principal task will be to establish the connection of the elements with their positive and negative polarities in the soul, and give a neat idea of it. One will see that the body, as well as the soul, with their effects, are alive and working, that their preservation and destruction are subject to the immutable laws of the four-pole magnet, i.e. the secret of the tetragrammaton, and governed by them. If he who is to be initiated will attentively meditate about it, he will win a clear idea not only of the bodily functions, but also of those of the soul, and come to a sound notion of the mutual interaction according to the original laws. The astral plane. The astral plane, often designated as the fourth dimension, has not been created out of the four elements, but it is a density degree of the Akasha principle. Consequently, of all that up to now in the material world occurred, is actually occurring and will occur, and has its origin, regulation, and existence. As said before, Akasha, in its subtlest form, is the ether well known to all of us, in which, amongst other vibrations, electric as well as magnetic ones are propagating. Consequently, this vibration sphere is the origin of light, sound, colour, rhythm, and life in all things created. As Akasha is the origin of all existing things, all that ever was produced, is being produced, and will be produced in the future, is reflected in it. Therefore, in the astral plane, there is to be seen the emanation of the eternal, having neither a beginning nor an end, as it is timeless and spaceless. The adept who sees his way about this plane may find everything here, no matter the point in question be in the past, the present, or the future. How far this perception will reach depends on the degree of his perfection. Will depend on the degree of his perfection. Occultists and spiritualists and most of religions name the astral plane the world beyond. However, the adept knows very well that there is no such thing as hence and beyond, and feels no fear of death, which concept is quite strange to him. If by the disintegrating work of the elements or a sudden breakup, the astral matrix, which is the connecting matter between the grossly material body and the astral body, has got loose, then will happen what we commonly call death, which, however, in reality is nothing else but a passage from the terrestrial world to the astral world. Backed up by this law, the adept knows no fear of death, being convinced that he will not approach uncertainty. Through his control of the elements, besides many other things, he also can achieve a slackening of the astral matrix, which will result in a spontaneous separation of the astral body from the mortal frame. Thus, he will be able to visit the remotest regions, transfer himself into various planes in the form of his astral body. This is the positive explanation of so many tales, in which saints have been seen at the same time in different places and have even been working there. The astral plane has various kinds of inhabitants. First of all, there are the deceased ones who, having left the earth, are abiding in the corresponding density degree, according to their spiritual maturity, which is designated by the various religions as heaven or hell. The adepts seeing only symbols therein. The nobler, purer, and the more perfect an entity happens to be, all the purer and finer will be the density degree of the inhabited astral plane. Little by little, the astral body is dissolving until it has become suitable to the degree of vibrations of the respective step of the astral level, or identical with it. As you see, this identification depends on the maturity and the spiritual perfection the entity concerned achieved on this earth. Besides, the astral plane is inhabited by many other beings, of which I am mentioning only some species here. There are, for example, the so-called elementaries, entities with one or only very few qualities according to the dominant vibrations of the elements. There are living on the similar vibrations proper to man and transmitted by him into the astral plane. They are living on the similar vibrations proper to man and transmitted by him into the astral plane. Among them, there are some which have already reached a certain degree of intelligence, and some magicians are using these low-powered beings for their selfish purposes. Another kind of beings are the larvae, which have been brought into life consciously or unconsciously by intense sensorial thinking through the astral matrix. They are not real beings, but only forms thriving on the passions of the animal world, on the lowest step of the astral level. Their instinct of self-preservation carries them into the sphere of those men whose passions are responsive to them. They will try directly or indirectly to raise and kindle the passions slumbering in man. If these forms are succeeding in seducing men, to give in to their suitable passion, they are feeding and thriving on the emanation of this passion produced in man. Man laden with many passions will attract a host of such larvae in the lowest sphere of his astral plane. A great fight takes place, and in the problem of magic, this fact plays an important role. More about it is to be found in the chapter dealing with introspection. There are also other elementaries and larvae which can be produced in the artificial magic way. As to further details, see in the practical part of this book. Another kind of beings the adept often has to deal with in the astral plane must not be overlooked, namely the beings of the four pure elements. In the element of fire, their name is salamander. In the airy element, they are the sylphides or sylphides. In the water element, they are called mermaids or undines, and in the element of earth, they are the gnomes or goblins. These beings represent, as it were, the connection between the astral plane and the earthly elements. How to establish the connection with these beings, how to control them, what can be achieved with their help, all this will be reserved to the practical part of the present book, to which I shall dedicate the special chapter, Magic of the Elements. Furthermore, there is a host of other beings such as satyrs, wood maidens, water goblins, etc., who could be specified. Even if all this sounds like a fairy tale, on the astral plane, the previously described beings are the very same realities as all the other earthly beings. The adept's clairvoyant eyes can see all of them, if he desires so, and is able to establish the connection with them. So, excluding any doubt of the existence of these beings right from the beginning. That is why the adept has to ripen first and learn to examine before being able to judge. Okay, we'll come back for the spirit.